Today, extra shot time, my friends.
Yeah.
And Dina told us right before we came on, she made a brand new hot pot of coffee. And my question was, did you make the blonde roast? Because we have a whole pile up of the blonde roast that no one likes because it's not strong enough. And your answer was?
I made the breakfast blend.
But wait, when you said a new hot pot of a new hot, what was I thinking? Hot pocket.
Hot pocket.
Oh, I was like a hot pocket.
Well,
when you make those?
I haven't had one of those
When
in
I say
forever.
new pot of coffee, it insinuates that it's hot, right? I don't know why I decided to say new hot pot of coffee.
like
Walt
hot
Gray would
pot,
say,
hot
no,
pocket.
don't say, what does he call that? You say this.
Oh, just all the cliches.
Cliches. And not,
The
whatever.
reiterating of the words,
Yeah.
like tweet out. It's just tweet.
You just tweet. You know all the grammatical
He's a stickler.
things.
Tweet out. Tweet,
Anyways, we are going to start off today's extra shot talking about Harvard and them pulling some students from the freshman class, who they already accepted.
Right.
Why? What's going on?
So first of all, parents. I mean, as you listen to this story, imagine your kid getting into Harvard, right?
Huge
Getting
feat.
into this school,
Yes.
and then being told because of what you put on social media, we are no longer going to have you as a student at our university.
As my father would say, you had it made, but you blew it.
But you blew it.
He'll say that to me all the
Does
time.
he tell you that?
Papa tell us
Papa
if I do something, and it could be something as minor as, oh, I was running and I, slightly like tweaked my ankle. He'll be like, you had it made, but you blew it. Like,
Well, Papa tell us would be angry at this.
Ooh,
all
he would
right,
be hot.
here's the backstory.
'Kay.
Harvard University had a bunch of people apply. 10 of those students
Okay.
got onto this Facebook chat and started writing offensive memes, sharing photos that were, according to the Harvard Crimson student newspaper, images mocking sexual assault, the Holocaust, deaths of children. One called the hypothetical hanging of a Mexican child pinata time.
Okay.
I
we
mean,
have
they
crossed a line.
Yes, they crossed many lines, many racial lines. And so Harvard got wind of all of this. This was back in December. All these students who got accepted were able to connect via the Harvard Class of 2021's Facebook page, because when you get onto, a new school's Facebook group, you're kind of part of the elite club. So then about 100 students off of that created this separate chat room on Facebook. And so 10 of those students who had acceptance letters and who ready to go to this school were told that's been revoked. So Harvard did say, as a reminder, that they do reserve the right to withdraw an offer of admission under certain circumstances, and that includes any behavior that brings into question his or her honesty, maturity, or moral character. So clearly to them, this definitely offended the moral character part of that quote. By the way, by the numbers, 40,000 people applied roughly to get into that school this last year. Only 2,056 people were accepted. So of the 40,000 people trying to get in, they are really trying to sort out the cream of the crop. They don't want any bad apples. So they're saying, you know what?
And they can.
And they can. Legally, I was just listening to GMA this morning, and from a lawyer's standpoint, they legally can say, you cross the line, not coming to our school.
I mean, people fight their entire life to try to get into Harvard. There's another 10 dozen kids waiting if someone acts up.
Right. So obviously this brings up the freedom of speech question as well. People saying, don't they have the right to say what they want to say, to post what they want to post? Yes, but Harvard also has a right to invoke some sort of a consequence. They don't have to be okay with your freedom of speech. And so they chose to say, okay, you're no longer going to be students here.
Yeah, so and even in regards to the idea of freedom of speech, yes, as American citizens, we do have the freedom of speech. But is freedom of speech the same as hate speech? Because let's be clear, history has shown over the years, past and present, and in the future, hate speech has turned into hate acts. So as a university, by not doing something, you are leaving yourself open to the potential that you don't know these kids. You just see what they're posting online. So let's say one of these kids gets to school and another kid sees what they post and they feel some type of way. Let's say that hate speech turns into real feelings that we have about these particular groups of people, and it turns into an act directed at said groups. Because again, history has shown hate speech turns into hate acts. So I get free speech, but does that mean that you should leave yourself open to the potential that can go south at any moment.
No. And obviously somewhere within, and I don't want to place blame on anyone because we don't know, but within the education, the public education, the private education system right now, when these kids are preparing themselves to go off to get higher education, to go off to college, if you're getting into Harvard, you know what you're doing. This has been part of the plan. You've done really well in school. You had the admission process, I'm sure, is intense. 5% acceptance rate, so you know that it's going to take a lot to get in. For the kids to be going to school right now, and obviously they're not being told enough, and I think it's going in one ear out the other, because in this generation, yes, what you post on social media is going to live forever until something like this happens and they are revoked from the university of their dreams. Oh, then you'll realize. So their needs, and I've been saying this for years, it's something that I even have wanted to create, this education system, right? This program, just like you have sex ed to teach kids about sexual interaction and our reproductive system and all of that, so that they know, and that whether they're going to listen or not, that education is provided to them, because I feel it's our responsibility as adults to help mold this next generation, especially as educators, and if you're part of the education system. But there needs to be some sort of program in place, and maybe there are out there in different schools. At least the high school district that I went to, there isn't one. But there needs to be a series of programs that these kids go through so they can see the real life implications that happens if you really getting racial on social media. You know that what that does to you in real life if it were to happen. So what makes them think that it's okay online?
And the bigger, story here too is that not only is this impacting them in their school of choice, but now getting into another school, now getting a job. What you do when you hit send or post or confirm or yes or whatever the mode is.
Even if it's in a private chat, which you think is private.
Even if it's in a private chat, because of the way that social media has the ability to be screenshotted and sent out to the masses, you just have to take ownership for what you are posting and what you are responsible for. The same thing goes for, if you wouldn't say it, don't do it online. If you wouldn't say it to someone else, don't post it in a chat. I mean, you're right. We need to have more of these discussions with our students, because growing up, we didn't have the big social media presence like we do now, but it has become a part of society in a way that these kids are expressing themselves, which can be used for good.
And don't get me wrong, I don't want to say that, oh, it's everyone else's fault except for the kids who are doing it, because they need to be held. You're adults at this point going off into college. You need to understand that, and if you can't get that through your head that what you should and shouldn't do on that level, maybe you don't deserve to be at Harvard. I mean, it's a place, again, there are a million people waiting in the wings to get in, and you mess up once, that just opens up the door, for another person to come in.
And then let's take it a step further, because yes, we need to teach kids what they should do and not do online, but how about we teach kids not to have these types of hateful thoughts and feelings
in their hearts.
Exactly. Let's start at the base, because again, it's 2017 and we're still going through issues where racially insensitive memes and just information that's not even factual or correct is being floated out for the sake of comedy, or it was just a joke, it was just a meme. So again, these are 17, 18-year-olds, and so we have this idea that racism doesn't exist, or people don't have these ideas, but we're seeing kids now spewing out this type of mentality, or this type of language, or these types of things. So the discussion also needs to be, if your child is a part of a situation like this, talk to your kids, because again, where are we learning this? This is 2017. This ain't the 18th.
And
this ain't the 1940s.
To adults too.
Right.
This is happening
outside of the school and their peers. I'm talking the music that these kids listen to, the amount of social media they're exposed to. I mean, we want to talk about the root. There are so many different roots here.
Yeah.
But you're right, it comes down to, yes, what are our kids learning? How much are they exposed to? And yes, it's become too much. We know that, but we can't fight that.
Right.
It's
let's work with it.
How do we make this happen?
Yeah.
Go ahead. I know people are chiming in.
So Cecilia Jimenez, good morning to you.
Hey, Cecilia.
Congratulations, because she says her daughter was accepted to Harvard this fall. which is amazing, Cecilia. So congrats to her. She says, I would go crazy and ballistic on her if she did something like that, but I'm happy that these students got caught because I don't want any of those students in the same dorm as my girl.
Guilty by association.
Yeah.
Have to think about that.
Absolutely. But then Penny says, where does our freedom stop being our freedom?
Well, you can say it. We're not saying you can't say it, but there are consequences. And if you, I know how I am about rules and regulations. If you don't read the fine print that says if you act out, you're not going to be able to come to Harvard. So that's part of the consequence.
Right.
You can speak out, certainly, but you have to face the consequences if you're offending someone or university that doesn't allow that.
And even on a smaller scale, being a journalist, we are not allowed and shouldn't ethically say our political viewpoints and certain things. And we know that if we start to do that, we will be taken as less credible. We could lose our jobs. And so you just have to know where you have to draw your own line and your responsibilities. But then also, I like this comment from Patrick, and this is on to your point, a program to teach kids about social media etiquette, that's the job of the parents. So
but here, come over here.
Yeah, there we go.
But here's the thing. These kids are being raised by a generation of people who didn't have the access to social media that they do today. It's a little different. And I'm defending you parents out there because where are you guys learning the etiquette? You know what I'm saying? So there are so many ways in which you can slip up on social media because of, you don't know, parents may not know when you throw out a tweet that it goes on your timeline, which is then pushed out to everyone who follows you. I mean, there are certain little elements about Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, all of the dating apps that are out there now, things that generation, the parental generation, didn't necessarily have growing up. So I'm saying it's not your fault either. There needs to be a system of experts who are teaching these kids because you can do the best as a parent, and I applaud you. I'm not a parent yet. I don't have to go through that. But it may not be enough because you just don't know.
And even every time a new social media app comes on, I'm like, how do you do this?
We're not in school anymore, so we're like, oh,
right.
And we work in news and we're given this information, but until you use it and you know the ins and outs of these applications, you don't understand. And sometimes it could be unintentional.
Right.
You throw something out, it goes to the world, it's supposed to be a private message. But when you're walking the line of racism and the things that in your heart you should not even be feeling as a good human being, that's something else.
Yeah, and because again, like I said, hate speech can turn into hate acts. And we don't know who's who. You don't know what people have inside or what they intend to do. You don't know. Things get escalated without even purposely being escalated. Stuff just happens. That's just life. So again, to kind of get ahead of the curve, like Megan said, maybe you teach kids what they should and should not do. But again, it all comes down to consequences, right? Before social media, we had consequences. If you did something wrong, your mom and dad would come in and say, you know what, you shouldn't have done this, and now this is the consequence. Consequences have never went away in the history of ever.
Yeah.
So.
But there are more now.
There are more now, and this is just the world that we live in, especially with social media.
And you could argue and say, well, if the child, well, how about their freedom of speech? And they say, no, Mom, I want to be jumping on the couch. That's their freedom of speech, but you're in your mom and dad, or your mom or your dad, or your moms and dads. You're in their household. You have to follow the rules in their household. When you become a certain age and you decide to move out, then that is your choice. But just like going to the university, you're held to a certain standard because you're trying to be under their roof. You're trying to be educated by their educators. You got to follow the rules.
And Brenda Bellamy Small agrees with Cornelia on this point. She says maybe the parents should be teaching their kids how to behave on social media, and maybe they should teach their kids how not to be racist. Maybe they should take time to watch their kids and monitor their social media exposure. And the breakdown, she says, happens at home. Joseph says, my niece will be going there this summer. Congratulations.
A lot of Harvard.
Joseph and your niece.
Moms, dads, uncles, aunties.
Yeah. And Joseph says young people need to think before chatting about issues on a social forum. And I think that that's very true. So good discussion, everybody. Thanks for weighing in.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so we're